Have you ever been in a conversation, nodding and smiling, while inside your mind is screaming just one word: wait? Wait, I know that word. Wait, I've heard that before. Wait, what does that mean again? I was trapped in that silent scream for years. I could read menus, understand basic instructions, but real, flowing, everyday English conversation? It felt like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. I was missing the very glue that holds the language together. That all changed when I discovered a simple, almost absurdly powerful idea. It wasn't about learning more obscure grammar rules or memorizing endless lists of useless vocabulary. It was about mastering the core. The essential, non-negotiable, daily use words that native speakers don't even think about. I found a list, a specific collection of 600 words. And this wasn't just any list. This was the key. Research from the Oxford English Corpus shows that just 600 keywords form the foundation of nearly 90% of everyday English conversations, books, and news. Let me say that again. 600 words give you almost 90% of the language you actually encounter. This is the secret they don't tell you in most textbooks. You don't need to know 10,000 words to start speaking confidently. You need to know the right 600 words deeply, intuitively, and automatically. My journey from frustrated beginner to confident speaker started right there, with this realization and this list. This is the story of that transformation, and this is your invitation to join me. We are going to dive into intermediate, 600 English words you must know. This isn't just a lesson, it's a new way of thinking about English. So, what are these magical words? They are the workhorses of the language. Think about the words get, make, do, take, have. These are not just verbs, they are chameleons. They change their meaning completely based on the words that follow them. Get up, get over, get by, get along, get done. Each phrase is a different idea, a different piece of life. Before I mastered this list, I would use a complicated, often incorrect verb because I didn't know how to use get properly. I was trying to build a house without nails, using only glue and hope. These 600 words are the nails, the screws, the 2x4s of your English house. The first 100 words on this list are what I call the invisible framework. These are the words so common you stop seeing them, but without them, every sentence collapses. Words like the, a, and, but, or, in, on, at, to, for. Prepositions and articles were my personal nightmare. Why in the morning but at night? Why on Monday but in July? The list doesn't just give you the words, it forces you to practice them in their natural habitat, real sentences. You stop asking why and start feeling what's right. It becomes a rhythm. But nouns and verbs alone don't make you fluent. You need the connectors, the descriptors, the words that add color and emotion. This is where the next 200 words came in, a group I called the sensory amplifiers. These are the adjectives and adverbs that transform a flat, robotic statement into a vivid picture. Instead of saying I had a good day, I learned to say I had an exceptionally productive day, or a surprisingly relaxing afternoon. Words like significant, various, specific, current, major, available, popular, aware, basic, central. These words are power. They allow you to express nuance and opinion. And then there are the adverbs. My speech used to be so flat. Now, I could say something happened recently, that I completely understand, that I absolutely agree. These words are the seasoning of English. Without them, the meal is bland. With them, it's delicious. I started listening to podcasts again, but this time was different. I wasn't just hearing a blur of sound, I was catching these amplifiers. A significantly higher rate, a particularly difficult problem, currently available. It was like a veil had been lifted. I was no longer on the outside looking in, I was starting to understand the subtle shades of meaning. The real magic, however, began when these words started to collocate. That was the game changer. Collocations are words that naturally go together, and native speakers use them without thinking. You make a decision, you don't take a decision. You have a shower, you don't make a shower. You do homework, you don't make homework. This list of 600 words is built around these partnerships. It taught me that strong goes with coffee, not powerful coffee, and that heavy goes with rain, not strong rain. This is the knowledge that separates a textbook learner from a natural speaker. I began a simple practice. Every day, I would take 5 words from the list and not just memorize them, but hunt for their most common collocations. I created a mind map for the word get. In the center, get. Branching out, get a job, get ready, get tired, get better, get worse, get lost, get home, get a chance, get involved. This wasn't learning words, it was learning chunks of language. My brain started to think in these chunks. When I wanted to say I was becoming sick, the phrase "I'm getting sick" emerged automatically. It felt like a superpower. The transition from recognizing words to actively using them was the biggest hurdle. I had a solid foundation, but my speech still felt slow and deliberate. I knew I had to bridge the gap between my passive knowledge and my active vocabulary. This is where the everyday English practice part of the method became my obsession. It's not enough to know the word evidence, you need to be able to say, the evidence suggests a different conclusion without pausing to think. I created a ruthless system for myself. I called it the one-sentence challenge. For every single one of the 600 words, I forced myself to create a personal, emotionally relevant sentence. This wasn't about translating from my native language. It was about forging a direct neural pathway between the English word and a real-life memory or feeling. For the word reluctant, I didn't just write, he was reluctant to go. I wrote, I was deeply reluctant to change my job, but the evidence showed it was necessary for my career. This connected the new word to a genuine personal crossroads, making it unforgettable. Then I took it a step further. I started a voice journal. Every evening, I would record myself speaking for 2 minutes about my day, but with a rule, I had to use at least 3 of the words I was currently studying. The first few recordings were painful. I could hear myself hesitating, searching for the words, correcting my grammar. But within a week, something shifted. The words consequently, furthermore, and approximately started to pop up without me forcing them. They were becoming my tools for thought. This active recall practice is what most learners skip. They consume content passively, listening, reading, which is vital, but it's only half the battle. Your brain needs the stress, the struggle, of retrieving the word from memory and assembling it into a coherent sentence in real time. This struggle is where true learning and neural connection happen. I was no longer just a student of English, I was becoming a user of English. The language was slowly transforming from a foreign subject I studied into a natural medium for expressing my own thoughts, my own personality, my own life. The true test came, as it always does, outside the safe confines of my study room. It was a team meeting at work, conducted entirely in English. Before my journey with the 600 words, I would sit in silence, my heart pounding, hoping no one would ask me a direct question. But this time was different. We were discussing a project delay. My manager explained the situation, and I heard him use the word issue, a word from my list. Then he said consequence, another word I had practiced. The words were no longer foreign objects, they were familiar landmarks in the conversation. I took a deep breath and said, "So, the primary issue is the delayed shipment, and the immediate consequence is that we have to adjust our launch schedule." The words came out smoothly, naturally. My manager nodded. "Exactly," he said. "We need a temporary solution." Another keyword. I felt a surge of confidence. I was not just understanding, I was participating. I was contributing. The 600 words were giving me the bricks, and I was finally starting to build. This experience taught me a critical lesson. Confidence isn't something you have before you speak, it's something you build by speaking successfully. Every correct usage of a keyword, every time you are understood, deposits a little more confidence into your psychological bank. The list provided the raw material, but the real-world practice was the mint that turned that raw material into currency. I started seeking out these opportunities. I joined an online conversation group. I forced myself to ask questions in webinars. I even started thinking in English during my morning commute, narrating my own life using the vocabulary I was mastering. The words began to lose their individual identities and started to form a cohesive system in my mind. I saw how problem often led to solution. How cause was connected to effect. How advantage was balanced by disadvantage. This wasn't just a list of 600 isolated words, it was a network of ideas, a toolkit for expressing complex thoughts. I was no longer translating my thoughts from my native language. I was constructing them directly in English, using the most reliable and frequently used parts available. The final frontier, the last 200 words on the list, were the most intimidating and the most rewarding. I call them the architect's tools. These are the words that allow you to build complex, sophisticated structures of thought. They are the language of analysis, opinion, and subtle argument. Words like nevertheless, furthermore, consequently, hypothesis, framework, phenomenon, strategy, and implementation. Before I mastered these, my arguments were simple and direct. I think this is good. The reason is X. But with these new tools, I could layer my thoughts. I could say, the initial results were promising, nevertheless, we must consider the long-term implications. Furthermore, the data suggests a broader phenomenon at play. Consequently, a revised strategy is required for effective implementation. This was no longer just conversation, this was persuasion. This was influence. I practiced by reading opinion pieces in newspapers and then summarizing the author's argument out loud, deliberately forcing myself to use these connector words. The author's primary hypothesis is that. She supports this with evidence from. However, she acknowledges a potential contradiction. Consequently, she proposes a framework for. This exercise was grueling at first, but it wired my brain to think in this more structured, English way. I was learning to assemble my ideas with the same logical flow that native academics and professionals use. This was the ultimate liberation. The 600 words had taken me from a state of basic survival, where I could ask for directions and order food, to a state of intellectual expression. I could now engage in debates about politics, discuss the themes of a complex film, and explain the nuances of my own job with precision. The language was no longer a barrier to who I was, it was becoming a conduit for expressing the person I had always been inside, the one with opinions, ideas, and a voice that deserved to be heard. The journey through these words was the journey to finding my voice in a new language. The transformation was undeniable, but it wasn't magical. It was architectural. I wasn't just collecting words, I was building a house for my thoughts in English. And every solid structure needs a reliable foundation and a sturdy framework. The 600 words provided the concrete and steel, but I had to become the architect. This meant moving beyond simple sentences and starting to construct paragraphs, arguments, and stories. I developed a daily writing ritual. For 10 minutes, I would pick a topic, anything from a news headline to a personal memory, and write a short paragraph, deliberately using as many words from the list as I could. The goal wasn't poetic beauty, it was structural integrity. I focused on using connectors like however and therefore to link my ideas logically. I forced myself to employ adjectives like significant or potential to add depth. One day, I wrote about my commute. My daily commute is generally efficient, however, it occasionally encounters significant delays due to heavy traffic. Consequently, I am exploring alternative routes to ensure a more reliable journey. It sounded simple, but it was a complex structure built with my new tools. This practice of construction was vital. It revealed the grammatical joints and screws of the language. I saw how although introduces a contrasting idea, how despite requires a noun phrase, and how furthermore adds information without repeating the same point. I was no longer just speaking, I was engineering my speech. I started to understand the rhythm and flow of English prose, how ideas are layered to build a case or tell a tale. This conscious construction eventually became subconscious, and my spoken English began to carry the same logical, connected quality. The paragraphs I wrote became the blueprints for the conversations I would have. There is a moment in every learner's journey where the scaffolding falls away and the structure stands on its own. For me, it happened on a day I didn't expect. I was on a video call with colleagues from 3 different countries, and we were brainstorming solutions to a complex logistical problem. The conversation was fast, filled with idioms and industry-specific terms. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, I found myself fully engaged. I was arguing, agreeing, and suggesting alternatives. Midway through, I used the phrase "a potential workaround" without a second thought. Then I said, "The fundamental principle, however, remains unchanged." After the call, I replayed the conversation in my head. I had used words like principle, potential, phase, and strategy not because I was trying to, but because they were the right tools for the job. They had become my default vocabulary. The 600 words were no longer a list I was studying, they had become the very texture of my English. They had moved from my slow, deliberate memory to the fast, intuitive part of my brain. This is the state of automaticity, where you stop thinking about the words and start thinking with them. This is the ultimate goal of everyday English practice. It's not about showing off fancy vocabulary. It's about making the essential vocabulary so readily available that it disappears, allowing you to focus purely on the meaning you want to convey, the connection you want to make. The language becomes a clear windowpane, not a stained glass window you have to stop and admire. You are no longer a performer struggling to remember lines, you are a person having a conversation. The struggle melts away, and what remains is simply communication. This is the freedom that awaits on the other side of this list. The journey through these 600 words did more than just improve my English, it fundamentally rewired my approach to learning itself. I had discovered a universal principle: mastery lies not in amassing endless information, but in identifying and internalizing the core, non-negotiable components of any system. This was the real dividend, the unexpected reward that paid out in every area of my life. I became more efficient at my job because I started focusing on the vital 20% of tasks that yielded 80% of the results. I became a better listener because I had trained myself to listen for key phrases and foundational ideas. This shift from a collector's mindset to an architect's mindset was the greatest gift. A collector is passive, always seeking more, their shelves perpetually cluttered. An architect is active and intentional, selecting the right materials for a specific, sturdy purpose. I stopped wanting to know every English word. Instead, I wanted to know the most powerful words in the most impactful combinations. This brought a sense of calm and direction to my studies that had been missing for years. The anxiety of not knowing enough was replaced by the confidence of knowing what matters deeply. This confidence is contagious. It spills over. When you conquer a mountain that has loomed over you for years, other hills suddenly seem like manageable slopes. The discipline, the daily practice, the celebration of small wins, this process became a blueprint for personal growth. I started applying the same method to learning a new software for my job, breaking it down to its essential functions first. I applied it to managing my finances, identifying the key metrics that truly mattered. The 600 English words were the training ground for a more focused, more effective way of moving through the world. They taught me that true power isn't about having all the answers, it's about mastering the questions that matter most. The final 100 words on the list were, in many ways, the most fascinating. I called them the words of nuance. These were not the loud, obvious words you use in an argument. They were the subtle, precise tools for painting with a finer brush. Words like subtle, crucial, underlying, mere, hence, whereas, and nonetheless. These words allowed me to express degrees of importance, subtle distinctions, and logical relationships that I never could before. Before, my world in English was black and white. Things were good or bad, problems or solutions. With these words, I entered a world of grays, of delicate shades of meaning. I could now say, there's a subtle difference between these two options, or the underlying issue is more complex than it appears. I could dismiss an irrelevant point by calling it a mere distraction. These words gave me intellectual precision. They were the difference between saying I'm tired and saying I'm experiencing a profound sense of lethargy, hence my lack of productivity today. One is a statement, the other is an explanation. I practiced these by playing a mental game. I would take a simple sentence and see how many nuanced versions I could create. The meeting was long, became the meeting was excessively long, hence my frustration, which then became the meeting was excessively long. Nonetheless, the crucial information was finally shared. I was learning to weave complex tapestries of thought with these linguistic threads. This wasn't just about speaking better English, it was about training my mind to think in more sophisticated, interconnected patterns. The language was becoming a vehicle for higher-order reasoning. The ultimate test of this entire journey wasn't in a boardroom or a conversation, it was in the quiet solitude of reading a novel. I picked up a book I had tried and failed to read a year earlier. Back then, it was a slog. Every page had sent me to the dictionary, breaking the flow and draining the joy. This time, I opened it with a sense of trepidation. Within a few pages, I realized something was different. I wasn't just understanding the plot, I was feeling the rhythm of the prose. The core vocabulary I had internalized was doing the heavy lifting, allowing my brain to relax and absorb the more complex, literary words from their context. I encountered the sentence, "He was reticent to discuss the matter," a stark contrast to his usual garrulous nature. A year ago, reticent and garrulous would have stopped me cold. This time, I didn't need a dictionary. The framework of the sentence, built with words I knew deeply, discuss, matter, stark, contrast, usual, nature, provided a perfect scaffold. My mind instantly inferred that reticent meant reluctant to speak, and garrulous meant overly talkative. The 600 words had not just given me a vocabulary, they had given me a powerful, context-based decoding tool. This was the final piece of the puzzle. Fluency isn't just about production, it's about seamless comprehension. By owning those 600 words, I had unlocked the ability to learn thousands more, not through tedious memorization, but through natural, enjoyable immersion. I was no longer studying the language from the outside, I was consuming content from within it, allowing the language to teach me itself. The book was no longer a textbook, it was a story again, and I was finally invited to the party. The most profound realization in this entire journey was this: language is not a subject to be studied, but a muscle to be trained. And like any muscle, it requires consistent, deliberate practice to grow. My everyday English practice became my daily workout. I stopped thinking of it as studying and started thinking of it as conditioning. I had my set of exercises, the voice journal, the one-sentence challenges, the collocation mind maps, and I performed them with the discipline of an athlete. This shift in mindset was crucial. It removed the guilt from the process. Some days, I was tired and my practice was mediocre. Other days, I felt strong and made significant leaps. But just like an athlete doesn't expect to set a personal record every single day, I stopped expecting fluency to arrive overnight. I focused on showing up. I focused on the repetition. The daily act of retrieving a word, of forcing it into a new and personal sentence, was like a rep for my brain. Over time, these reps built strength. The neural pathways thickened. The process became faster, more efficient. I began to see vocabulary as a living, breathing entity in my mind. It wasn't a static list on a page. It was a dynamic network, with the 600 core words as the central hubs. Every new word I learned from context would connect to one of these strong, central hubs. The word tenacious connected to the hub strong. Ephemeral connected to the hub short. Benevolent connected to the hub kind. My knowledge was no longer a pile of scattered leaves, it was a tree, with deep roots and interconnected branches. This organized, structured mental lexicon is what allows for the speed and accuracy of native-like speech. The words are there, but more importantly, their connections are there, creating a web of meaning that I could navigate instantly. The final, and perhaps most rewarding, phase of my journey began when I started to teach. A colleague, noticing my newfound confidence, asked me for help with his own English. I was terrified. What did I know? I wasn't a teacher. But I agreed, and in doing so, I stumbled upon the ultimate learning tool: explanation. I started by simply sharing my story, the frustration, the discovery of the 600-word principle, and my daily practice system. I showed him my mind maps for words like get and make. As I explained why make a decision is correct and take a decision is not, I was forced to articulate the subtle logic of collocations. I had to break down the architecture of a complex sentence using however and therefore. In explaining these concepts, my own understanding crystallized. The knowledge, which had become somewhat automatic, was now being brought back into the light of conscious thought and organized into teachable principles. This process solidified everything. It revealed the gaps in my own knowledge that I had glossed over. When my colleague asked, "But why can't I say I made my homework?" I had to dig deeper than ever before. I researched, I found patterns, and I learned that do is generally used for tasks and activities, while make is for creating or constructing something. By teaching, I became a student again, but a much more advanced and discerning one. I was no longer just building my own house, I was reading the blueprints, understanding the plumbing and electrical systems, and learning how to inspect the work. My fluency became fortified with a deep, structural integrity that only comes from having to deconstruct and rebuild the language for someone else. The last 100 words on the list were the final piece of the puzzle, but they were unlike all the others. I had moved from the foundational framework to the sensory amplifiers, and now I arrived at the words that give a language its soul, the idioms and phrasal verbs. These weren't just vocabulary items, they were cultural keys. Words like breakthrough, carry out, figure out, point of view, up to date, and once in a while. This was the realm where direct translation fails catastrophically. If you try to translate breakthrough word for word, you get nonsense. But to a native speaker, it vividly describes overcoming a major obstacle. I remember the first time I used figure out correctly in a conversation. I said, "It took me a while, but I finally figured out the new software." The person I was speaking to didn't react, which was the greatest compliment. It meant I had used it naturally. I hadn't just communicated an idea, I had used the exact cultural shorthand a native speaker would. This is the moment you stop being a tourist in the language and start being a local. Mastering these phrases was the final step in achieving automaticity. They are the glue of informal, flowing speech. I practiced them not in isolation, but in clusters. I would take a concept like problem solving and list all the associated phrases, figure out a solution, work through an issue, deal with a problem, get to the root of it. This thematic approach wired my brain for speed. When a problem arose in conversation, my mind didn't scramble for a complicated verb, it effortlessly reached for the ready-made phrase figure out or deal with. This is the efficiency of native speech. It's not about big words, it's about the right, pre-assembled chunks of language. The final stage of my journey was not about learning new words, but about learning a new state of being within the language, a state of effortless flow. This is where the practice in everyday English practice truly revealed its purpose. It was the disciplined repetition that carved neural pathways so deep that the language began to flow through them like water down a familiar riverbed. I was no longer constructing sentences, I was conducting a mental symphony where the 600 words were the orchestra, each section coming in at the right time without a conscious cue from me. This automaticity transformed my social interactions. Before, a simple chat required a portion of my brain to act as a frantic translator and editor, draining my mental energy and making me seem distant or shy. Now, that cognitive load had vanished. The language processing happened in the background, freeing up 100% of my attention to focus on the person in front of me, their expressions, their tone, the subtext of their words. I was finally present in conversations. I could listen to understand, not just to formulate a response. This was the most humanizing part of the entire process. I could connect with people on a level that transcended the mechanics of grammar and vocabulary. The ultimate confidence came from embracing imperfection. Even with this core vocabulary deeply internalized, I still made mistakes. I might occasionally use a slightly wrong preposition or mix up a collocation. But the difference was profound. I was no longer terrified of error. The solid foundation of the 600 words gave me a safety net. I could self-correct smoothly, or even laugh it off without the conversation crumbling. I had moved from a mindset of fear, where every interaction was a test I could fail, to a mindset of communication, where the goal was simply to connect and be understood. The language had become a tool, and like any good craftsman, I was no longer afraid of my tools. I used them with respect, but also with confidence and ease. The true measure of this system came not in the classroom, but in the unpredictable chaos of the real world. My moment of truth arrived during a solo business trip to London. I was navigating the tube, ordering in pubs, and participating in meetings with clients whose accents ranged from the crisp and formal to the fast and colloquial. This was the final exam, and there was no textbook. I remember standing in a noisy pub, trying to order a drink. The bartender, moving at lightning speed, shouted something to me that I completely missed. A year ago, I would have frozen, smiled nervously, and just pointed. But this time, my brain, conditioned by daily practice, did something remarkable. It didn't panic. I automatically used a phrase from my core toolkit. "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat it?" The bartender smiled and said, "No worries, mate. Just asked if you wanted a lid for it." The interaction was seamless. There was no awkwardness, no shame. It was just two people communicating. In every meeting, the words were there. When we hit a complication, I said, "So the underlying issue is the supply chain." When we brainstormed, I offered, one potential approach could be to phase the implementation. The language was working for me, effortlessly. I was no longer a student performing, I was a professional communicating. This experience taught me the ultimate purpose of mastering those 600 words. It grants you resilience. You are no longer brittle, shuddering at the first unexpected phrase or thick accent. You are flexible. You have a deep well of core vocabulary that you can manipulate and adapt to any situation. You know how to ask for clarification, how to rephrase, how to engage. You possess the linguistic durability to handle the beautiful, messy, and unscripted reality of a language in its natural habitat. The practice room had vanished, and I was finally dancing in the grand ball of everyday English, and it was exhilarating. The journey with these 600 words did not end with fluency, it evolved into something far more profound, a self-sustaining cycle of growth. I had reached a tipping point where the language itself began to teach me. The solid core vocabulary acted as a magnetic force, naturally attracting and bonding with new, more complex words I encountered. I was no longer memorizing, I was absorbing. This is the state of autonomous learning, the ultimate goal of any educational endeavor. I noticed this happening when I read a technical report at work and saw the word exacerbate. Before, it would have been a scary, unknown word. Now, my brain instantly linked it to my core word worse. The sentence was, "The delay will exacerbate the budget problems." I understood it immediately, make worse. The connection was instantaneous and secure because it was tethered to a strong, familiar concept in my mental framework. My vocabulary was growing organically, not through forced feeding, but through a natural process of association and context. The 600 words were the roots, and now new words were sprouting from them constantly. This autonomous growth is the real freedom. It means you are no longer dependent on teachers or textbooks for your progress. You can learn from any source: a movie, a song, a casual conversation, a street sign. The world becomes your classroom because you have the tools to decode it. You develop a curiosity for new words, not a fear of them. You start to notice patterns, prefixes, and suffixes. You see predict, contradict, addict, and you understand the core concept of saying or declaring from the Latin dicere. The language becomes a fascinating puzzle you are constantly solving, and every day you unlock a new piece. This is the endless, joyful journey that begins once you have firmly laid the foundation. But beyond the logic and the strategy, there is a heart to this journey. Language is not just a tool for transaction, it is a vessel for emotion, for connection, for sharing our humanity. The final, and most beautiful, transformation occurred when I realized that these 600 words had given me the ability to not just speak, but to feel in English. I could now understand the gentle humor in a colleague's sarcastic remark, the subtle worry in a friend's voice, and the genuine excitement in someone's good news. I recall a moment when a friend told me about a personal setback. Before, I would have been limited to simple, almost clinical phrases like "I'm sorry to hear that." But with this deeper vocabulary, I could express genuine empathy. I heard myself say, "That sounds incredibly difficult. You must be feeling so frustrated after all that effort." I used words like frustrated, disappointed, and challenging. I wasn't just reciting phrases, I was articulating a shared human emotion. The conversation deepened instantly. I was no longer just a language learner, I was a friend, offering comfort in their language. This was the moment I knew the language had become a part of me. This emotional resonance is the final layer of fluency. It's what happens when words move from your head to your heart. You stop thinking about the grammar of the conditional tense and start instinctively saying, "I would have been so happy if you had come." You express regret, hope, and joy with a natural rhythm that resonates with native speakers on a subconscious level. They are no longer listening to your English, they are listening to you. The 600 words provided the palette, but I was now learning to paint with the full spectrum of human emotion, creating connections that were once beyond my reach. This is the unadvertised, priceless reward of the entire journey. The story of these 600 words is not an ending, but a beginning. It is the beginning of a lifelong, confident relationship with the English language. The fear of forgetting, the anxiety of stagnation, these ghosts that haunted my early studies have been banished. I now possess a mental framework that is permanent. Even if I don't use English for a month, those core words are there, waiting patiently like old friends, ready to reactivate the entire system the moment I need them. This is the gift of learning the fundamentals deeply. This journey taught me that fluency is not a destination you arrive at, it is a state of mind you carry with you. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that you have the tools to handle almost any verbal situation. It is the ability to walk into a room, a meeting, or a conversation in English without a script, trusting that the words will be there because you have built the infrastructure for them to flow. You are the architect of your own confidence, and the 600 words are the timeless, reliable materials. So, what is the true legacy of intermediate, 600 English words you must know? It is not just a list. It is a methodology. It is a mindset. It is the realization that power lies in precision, not in volume. It is the understanding that mastery is about depth, not breadth. This approach has forever changed not only how I speak English, but how I learn anything. It has given me a filter for the world, a way to identify the vital few from the trivial many. And so, my journey continues, but now from a position of strength, from a foundation that cannot be shaken, and with a voice that is finally, authentically, my own. The most powerful aspect of this entire system is its profound simplicity. In a world overflowing with complex language apps, exhaustive textbooks, and endless grammar rules, the idea that fluency could hinge on a mere 600 words seems almost too good to be true. But that is its genius. It is focused, it is manageable, and it is devastatingly effective. This is not a theory, it is a roadmap that I have walked, step by step, and now you hold it in your hands. Your journey starts not with overwhelm, but with clarity. You begin with the first 10 words. You don't just read them, you own them. You practice them in sentences about your own life. You say them out loud. You listen for them in the conversations around you. You build that initial, unshakable layer of your foundation. Then you add the next 10. And the next. This is not a race, it is a ritual. Each word mastered is a brick firmly laid, a permanent part of your linguistic home. The progress is tangible, measurable, and incredibly motivating. You are no longer lost in a sea of a million words, you are navigating a clear river with 600 sure landmarks. This is your invitation to begin. To trade the frustration of not understanding for the power of precise comprehension. To exchange the anxiety of silence for the confidence of having something to say. The key is right here. The 600 words are waiting. They are not demanding or difficult, they are the most common, useful, and powerful words in the English language. They are waiting to become your words. Your journey to a confident, fluent, and authentic voice in English begins with a single, simple step. Take it. And so, we arrive here, at the end of this story and the very beginning of yours. I began this journey trapped in that silent scream of wait. Wait, I don't understand, wait, I'm not ready. But now, I live in the confident space of and furthermore, and consequently, and here is my perspective. The transformation is not just possible, it is inevitable if you follow the path. The 600 words are the map, but your consistent, daily practice is the vehicle that will carry you to your destination. Do not underestimate the power of this simple, focused commitment. The world will try to distract you with flashy new methods and promises of instant fluency. Ignore them. The secret has been here all along, hidden in plain sight. It is in the relentless, dedicated mastery of the commonplace. It is in choosing to use significant instead of very big just once today. It is in forming one correct collocation like make progress without hesitation. These tiny, daily victories are the atoms that form the molecule of fluency. You now know the secret. You have seen the entire blueprint, from the first foundational word to the final nuanced phrase. You have the tools, the strategy, and the testimony. The only question that remains is one of action. Will you take this list and begin the most rewarding journey of your life? Will you decide that your voice, in English, deserves to be heard? The 600 words are your invitation. Don't just learn them. Live them. Speak them. And let them, in turn, set you free. We have reached the end of our narrated journey, but this is precisely where your active journey begins. The map has been drawn, the path illuminated. You possess the key, the 600 essential words that unlock the vast majority of everyday English. The theory is complete. What remains is the beautiful, personal, and sometimes messy work of turning that knowledge into a part of your very being. This is not the end of the story, it is the start of your chapter. Let me leave you not with a final thought, but with a first assignment. Today, do not try to learn 50 words. Do not even try to learn 10. Your mission is to choose one. Just one single word from the core list. Let's say you choose the word develop. Your task is to use it actively 3 times before the day ends. Write one sentence in a journal: I want to develop my skills further. Say one sentence out loud to yourself: I need to develop a better habit. And if you have the opportunity, use it in one conversation, even if it's just a simple, my company is developing a new product. This is how you build the momentum that leads to unshakable fluency. One word, one day, one sentence at a time. This small, consistent act is more powerful than any cramming session. It forges the neural pathways that make the language your own. This is the essence of everyday English practice. It is the commitment to showing up, day after day, and laying one more brick on your solid foundation. You have the tools. You have the plan. Now, go and build. The true beauty of reaching this level of mastery is that the tool itself disappears. You are no longer consciously thinking about the 600 words, you are simply thinking, feeling, and communicating. The language ceases to be a separate entity you are manipulating and becomes the very air your thoughts breathe. This is the final stage, where English is no longer a subject you know but a lens through which you see the world. I remember the moment I realized this shift had occurred. I was dreaming, and in my dream, I was having a complex, nuanced argument with someone. And we were speaking in perfect, fluent English. When I woke up, the realization washed over me: the language had been fully integrated into my subconscious. It was now a native part of my mental software. The 600 words, once a list I diligently studied, had become the silent alphabet of my thoughts. This is the ultimate freedom, when the practice has become so ingrained that it is now practice. This is the promise that awaits you. It is not just about ordering coffee or giving a presentation. It is about the quiet confidence of knowing that you can build a life in another language. You can form deep friendships, understand cultural jokes, fall in love, and argue your convictions. The 600 words are the seeds from which this entire life can grow. They are humble, simple seeds, but when planted in the fertile soil of daily practice, they yield a harvest of limitless expression. Your journey is the journey from conscious effort to unconscious elegance. And it is a journey worth starting today. It is a strange and wonderful thing to look back at the person I was before this journey. I kept a journal, and sometimes I read those early entries. The sentences are short, brittle, and filled with a palpable anxiety. They are the writings of someone trying to cross a wide river by stepping on stones that are too far apart. Now, my entries flow. They have rhythm and confidence. The river is still there, but I have built a bridge. The 600 words were the pylons of that bridge, strong and deep, allowing me to cross from doubt to certainty. This reflection is not an exercise in vanity, it is a necessary part of the process. You must measure your progress not by the word you haven't learned yet, but by the sentence you can now form that was once impossible. Celebrate the first time you use however correctly in a quick email. Cherish the moment you understand a joke without needing it explained. These are the true milestones, more significant than any test score. They are proof that the language is taking root inside you. And so, as we close this narrative, remember that your bridge is waiting to be built. The design is clear. The materials, the 600 essential words, are ready and waiting. Your commitment to daily practice is the labor that will assemble them into a structure that will last a lifetime. Do not fear the slow and steady pace. The mightiest bridge was not built in a day. It was built one strong, well-placed pylon at a time. Your fluency will be constructed in the very same way. Word by word. Sentence by sentence. Day by day. Until one day, you will turn around, look back, and realize you are standing firmly on the other side. And so, what becomes of the learner once the bridge is built and the other side becomes home? The relationship with the language enters a new, quiet phase of maintenance and effortless growth. The 600 words, having served their purpose as a rigorous syllabus, now transition into a different role. They become trusted guardians of your fluency. They form a stable core that keeps your English grounded, preventing it from unraveling during periods of less practice or in moments of unexpected pressure. This core acts as a self-correcting mechanism. When I encounter a new, complex word, I don't just memorize it in isolation. I automatically integrate it into my existing network. The new word perseverance naturally connects to the core words continue and effort. The phrase a testament to his perseverance is instantly understood because testament links to show and proof. This is the sustainable ecosystem the method creates. You are not just adding new words to a pile, you are grafting new branches onto a strong, living tree. The initial disciplined practice has given way to a natural, organic, and lifelong process of acquisition. This is the final, enduring gift of the journey. You are no longer a student who has finished a course. You are a custodian of your own fluency, equipped with a system that is both permanent and adaptive. The anxiety of loss is gone, replaced by the quiet confidence of ownership. The 600 words are no longer a list you study, they are the deep-rooted grammar of your intuition in English. They have given you not just the ability to speak, but the right to stop worrying about speaking, and to simply live, connect, and be understood in a world without linguistic borders. And so we find ourselves at the close of this particular narrative, but as I hope has become abundantly clear, it is merely the closing of a single chapter in your own, much larger story. This has never been about a finite destination called fluency. It is about embarking on a lifelong path of confident communication. The 600 words are your faithful compass on that path, always pointing you true north, ensuring you never lose your way even when the terrain of the language becomes unfamiliar or complex. This is the ultimate peace this method offers. It is the end of the frantic search for the next best method or the secret trick to learning English. The secret is out. It was always here, in the mastery of the essential. This knowledge settles the mind and allows you to channel all your energy into the joyful practice of using the language, rather than the anxious struggle of constantly learning it. You graduate from being a perpetual student to becoming a capable user, and then, ultimately, to simply being yourself, in English. Let your final takeaway be this profound simplicity. Trust the process. Trust the list. Trust the power of daily, focused practice with the words that matter most. Do not be seduced by complexity. The most elegant solutions are always simple. You have been given the simplest, most elegant solution to English fluency. Your journey now is to walk the path, one confident step at a time, knowing that with every word you master, you are not just learning English, you are building a more confident, expressive, and connected version of yourself. The road is clear. The first step is yours. And so, we have traversed the entire landscape of this method, from the first moment of frustrated realization to the final, quiet confidence of mastery. We have laid the foundation, built the walls, and now we stand within the complete structure, a house for your thoughts in English. This is the true ending, which is, in fact, a magnificent beginning. The tools are in your hands. The blueprint is in your mind. The only thing left is to live within the language you have built. This is the part where I, as your guide, step back. My narrative ends here, because your unique story is now ready to be written. Your victories will be your own. The first time you dream in English, the first time you make a room laugh with a perfectly timed joke, the first time you realize a complex thought has flowed from your mind to your mouth without a single conscious filter, these moments belong to you. They are the sacred rewards of the work you are about to undertake. They cannot be given to you in a script, they must be earned through your own practice. And so, this is not a goodbye, but a passing of the torch. You have listened to my journey. Now, go and create your own. Let the 600 words be your constant companions. Let your daily practice be your ritual. Let your growing confidence be your fuel. The path is proven. The result is certain. You have everything you need. The final line of this story is yours to speak, to write, and to live. Make it a great one. The quietest victory, and perhaps the most profound, is when you forget the number entirely. The concept of 600 words dissolves, leaving only the living, breathing reality of the language itself. You are no longer consciously pulling from a studied list, you are drawing from the well of your own matured understanding. The tools have become extensions of your hands, and you no longer see the hammer and nails, you see the house you have built, strong and weatherproof. This is the legacy of this journey. It is not a monument to the 600 words, but a testament to what they unlock, your authentic voice. The words retreat into the background, becoming the invisible scaffolding that supports everything you say and write and think. They become the silent engine of your confidence. You achieve a state where you are not speaking English, you are simply speaking, and the words that emerge are English, fluid and precise. So let the number fade. Let the list become a memory. What began as a structured method culminates in a form of artistic freedom. You started with a map, but now you know the territory by heart. You can wander, explore, and discover new vistas without fear of being lost. This is your new beginning, a lifelong conversation with the world, built upon the unshakable foundation of those essential, powerful, and now invisible words. The true beauty of this entire system is that its final lesson is one of letting go. You began this path clinging to each word, studying each definition, practicing each collocation with deliberate care. But the ultimate goal was always to release that conscious grip, to allow the language to become as natural and unthinking as breathing. The 600 words were the training wheels, and now you are riding freely, the wind of conversation in your hair, no longer concerned with the mechanics, only with the journey itself. This is what it means to have a language become part of you. It is no longer a separate skill you possess, but a facet of your identity. You think, you joke, you dream, and you argue in English. The struggle has transformed into a partnership. The language does not belong to textbooks or native speakers, it belongs to anyone who dares to use it, to shape it, to pour their own life and experiences into its versatile framework. You have earned your place in that global conversation. So, as we truly conclude, remember that the end of learning is the beginning of living. You have equipped yourself not just with vocabulary, but with a voice. Use it to tell your stories, to share your ideas, to connect with souls across the globe. The 600 words were your key. You have turned it. The door is now open. Walk through it with confidence and never look back. Your adventure is just beginning. The final word, the ultimate goal, is not fluency but freedom. It is the freedom from the constant mental translation, the freedom from the fear of a sudden silence, the freedom to be perceived not as a language learner, but as a person with thoughts worth hearing. This is the silent victory that the 600 words have gifted me. They were the diligent servants that built the palace, and now they have gracefully receded into the walls, leaving me as the sole occupant, free to live and breathe within the space they created. My journey began with a silent scream of wait. It ends not with a shout, but with a quiet, steady understanding. The echo of that frustration has been replaced by the rhythm of my own voice, engaging in the world. The 600 words were the key that turned the lock. The door is now open, and I walk through it every single day, in every conversation, in every thought I form. The method was the map, but the destination was always my own confidence. And so, I pass this map to you. It is worn from my travels, but its directions are clear. The path is proven. Your journey awaits. Do not seek to simply finish the list. Seek to absorb it, to live it, until it disappears and all that remains is you, speaking your truth, in clear, confident, and powerful English. Your voice is waiting. Let it be heard.